You wake up on a Tuesday morning and shuffle to the bathroom, which you do with such automatic routine that your brain barely participates. The water runs warm within about 30 seconds. You use a product specifically formulated for your hair type, another product specifically formulated for your body, possibly a third product specifically formulated for your face, and a fourth if you count shaving foam. You emerge clean, you smell like a laboratory's interpretation of a forest, and the entire operation has taken maybe 10 minutes and consumed products from four different multinational corporations. This is so normalized that it requires an act of imagination to step back from it and recognize how cosmically recent the whole arrangement is. For the overwhelming majority of human history, not a small slice, not an outlier period, but roughly 300,000 years of anatomically modern human existence, none of those products existed. There were no formulated shampoos, no bar soaps, no body washes, no deodorants, no carefully calibrated pH balanced cleansers. There was no running water in any building, hot or otherwise. There were no buildings with plumbing for the vast majority of that time. There was the body, there was whatever water happened to be nearby, and there was the accumulated knowledge of a community about what plants and materials could help with what problems. And yet those humans were not simply encrusted in filth and dying of preventable infections at age 20. They were functional, social, reproductive, long-distance traveling, art-making, tool constructing, war-fighting human beings who managed their bodies across entire lifetimes without a single product that would be recognizable in any modern pharmacy. How? What did they actually do? And perhaps more interestingly, what does the answer reveal about how the human body actually works when you stop applying industrial chemistry to it every morning? Before examining what ancient humans did, it's worth dismantling a foundational assumption that modern hygiene culture quietly installs in everyone who grows up within it. The assumption that the human body, left without intervention, rapidly becomes filthy and dangerous. This assumption is not quite accurate. The human body is not a passive surface that accumulates contamination without resistance. It is an active, self-managing biological system with its own comprehensive cleaning and maintenance mechanisms, some of which are really effective, all of which operated for hundreds of thousands of years before soap was invented. The skin is the most immediately relevant system. The outermost layer of skin, the stratum corneum, is composed of dead, flattened cells called corneocytes embedded in a lipid matrix. This layer continuously sheds, carrying away surface microorganisms, dead cells, and various surface contaminants as it does. The entire outer skin surface turns over roughly every 2 to 4 weeks, a continuous self-renewal process that removes accumulated material from the surface without any external intervention. Sebum, the oily secretion produced by sebaceous glands throughout the skin, serves multiple functions simultaneously. It provides a physical barrier against water loss and environmental damage. It contains antimicrobial compounds, including fatty acids and peptides, that inhibit the growth of pathogenic microorganisms on the skin surface. It distributes across the skin through physical movement, carrying antimicrobial activity across the whole surface. Sebum is not dirt, despite how modern hygiene culture tends to frame excess sebum as a problem requiring industrial removal. It is the skin's own maintenance product. The microbiome of the skin is a further layer of active defense. Hundreds of species of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms colonize the skin surface in a complex community that has co-evolved with the human body over millions of years. This community competes with pathogenic organisms for space and resources, produces compounds that inhibit pathogen growth, and modulates local immune responses. A healthy skin microbiome is a defense mechanism. Disrupting it, which harsh soaps and detergents do very effectively, can paradoxically increase vulnerability to certain skin infections. None of this means the human body manages everything perfectly without any assistance. It means the baseline capability of the unwashed human body is substantially higher than modern intuition suggests. Ancient humans were not simply enduring perpetual filth. They were working with a body that had substantial self-cleaning capacity, to which they added a range of active practices. Water was the primary cleaning medium for the entire span of human prehistory, and its use was far more widespread and deliberate than the image of the unwashed ancient might suggest. Hunter-gatherer groups were not randomly distributed across landscapes. They organized their movements around resource availability, and water sources, rivers, streams, lakes, springs, were among the most critical resources determining where groups camped and how they moved. Being near water was a survival requirement. Being near water also meant that bathing, washing, and water-based cleaning were accessible as regular practices. The anthropological record of contemporary hunter-gatherer groups, populations studied in the 20th century who maintained traditional lifestyles with limited contact with industrial products, consistently shows that bathing in available water sources is a common and regular practice. The Hadza of Tanzania, the Tsimane of Bolivia, various Amazonian groups all demonstrate regular water immersion and washing as part of normal daily or near-daily life, not as a special or infrequent occurrence. This makes sense when you consider the alternatives. Body odor, which results from bacterial metabolism of sweat and skin secretions, accumulates over time and is detectable at distances that matter for social interaction, and potentially for hunting approaches where concealing one's presence from prey is important. Insects are attracted to body secretions and open wounds. Skin irritation from accumulated debris, dried sweat, and environmental contamination is uncomfortable and can progress to infection. Water immersion addresses all of these problems simultaneously. Ancient humans, like modern humans, had perfectly functional noses and perfectly functional sensitivity to discomfort. They bathed because not bathing felt bad and because the water was right there. The question isn't whether ancient humans cleaned themselves with water. They clearly did. The question is what else they used. Plant materials provided the primary active cleaning agents across most of human prehistory, and the diversity of plant-based cleaning technologies developed by different cultures is remarkable. Saponin-containing plants are the most directly relevant category. Saponins are a class of chemical compounds that, when mixed with water and agitated, produce a foam and have surfactant properties, meaning they reduce the surface tension of water and allow it to penetrate and lift grease, oils, and other surface contamination more effectively than water alone. Saponins function, in other words, like soap. They are soap, biochemically, produced by the plants as a defensive compound against insects and microorganisms and repurposed by humans as a cleaning agent. Dozens of plant species produce saponins in sufficient concentration to be practically useful. Soapwort, whose Latin name saponaria literally encodes the soap connection, grows across Europe and Asia and was used as a washing agent across many cultures. Yucca root, used by various indigenous peoples of the Americas, produces a saponin-rich lather when worked with water that was used for washing both hair and skin. Soapbark tree, Quillaja saponaria, native to Chile and Peru, produces saponins in its bark in concentrations high enough that bark extracts create dense, stable foams. Soap nuts, the dried fruit of sapindus trees, have been used in South Asian and some East Asian cultures for washing for at least 2,000 years and remain commercially available today. The practical effectiveness of saponin-containing plants for cleaning purposes is not merely theoretical. These materials work as surfactants. They lift oils, disperse grease, and improve the effectiveness of water-based cleaning in ways that are chemically substantiated. They are not as powerful as modern synthetic detergents, but they are effective enough that many traditional cultures use them as primary cleaning agents for both bodies and textiles for generations. Beyond saponin-containing plants, various cultures used oils for cleaning in a counterintuitive but effective technique. The Roman strigil method, using olive oil applied to the skin and then scraped off with a curved metal tool called a strigil, works because oil dissolves other oils and carries away with it the sebum, sweat residue, and environmental contamination accumulated on the skin surface. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. You are, essentially, dissolving and physically removing the layer of material on your skin rather than emulsifying it with surfactants and washing it away. The Romans who used this method were not wealthy eccentrics pursuing luxury grooming. It was the standard cleaning method in Roman gymnasiums and baths across the social spectrum, and it works because the chemistry of oil dissolves oil is real and effective. Clay and fine soils were used as cleaning and absorbing agents in various cultural contexts. Clay minerals have significant surface area at the microscopic level and absorb oils and organic compounds effectively. Fine clay applied to skin and then rinsed away carries absorbed material with it. This technique appears in traditional grooming practices across multiple cultures and is the ancestor of modern clay-based facial masks. It is less convenient than liquid soap, but is a legitimate cleaning method that works through a different mechanism: absorption rather than surfaction. Wood ash provided an alkaline cleaning agent widely available to any culture using fire. Wood ash contains potassium carbonate and other alkaline compounds that, when dissolved in water, produce a mildly caustic solution with cleaning properties. Ancient soap was, in its earliest documented forms, essentially a combination of wood ash, lye, and animal fat. The alkali saponifies the fat, producing fatty acid salts that function as surfactants. The discovery of this chemistry probably arrived at accidentally by people who noticed that cleaning was easier in the vicinity of fire ash and water, eventually produced formal soap production documented in Mesopotamian records dating to around 2800 BCE. But the alkaline properties of ash solutions were almost certainly exploited for cleaning before formal soap chemistry was understood. The skin microbiome, that community of microorganisms living on the skin surface, deserves extended examination because it is central to understanding how ancient humans managed without the antiseptic cleaning routine that modern culture promotes. The composition of the skin microbiome varies across the body, matching different microenvironmental conditions. Oily regions like the face and scalp support different communities from dry regions like the forearms, and moist regions like armpits and groin support different communities still. This geographic variation is ancient and functional. The communities in each region have co-evolved with those conditions and with the human immune system over millions of years. Key members of the skin microbiome, particularly certain species of the genus Staphylococcus and the family Lactobacilliaceae, produce compounds that directly inhibit the growth of pathogenic organisms. Staphylococcus epidermidis, one of the most abundant skin commensals, produces a peptide that inhibits the growth of Staphylococcus aureus, a pathogen responsible for a range of serious skin and systemic infections. This microbial competition, beneficial commensals occupying space and producing antimicrobial compounds that limit pathogen establishment, is a genuine defense mechanism that functions better when the commensal community is intact and diverse. Modern hygiene practices disrupt this community significantly. Antibacterial soaps, frequent washing with surfactant-heavy products, and the use of various topical antimicrobial agents all reduce the density and diversity of the skin microbiome. The immediate effect is a clean surface. The longer-term effect, one that dermatological research has increasingly documented, can be a surface less effectively defended against pathogenic colonization, more prone to certain inflammatory conditions, and more sensitive to environmental irritants. Ancient humans living without soap had skin microbiomes that were, in all probability, richer, more diverse, and more functional in their defensive role than those of modern people who wash with industrial detergents twice daily. The absence of constant chemical disruption allowed the commensal community to maintain steady-state populations and perform their ecological roles more effectively. This is not an argument against washing. It is a clarification of what the human body's actual baseline capability was, and why ancient humans were not simply suffering from the absence of modern hygiene technology. They had a working biological defense system that modern practices have, in some ways, complicated rather than simply supplemented. Smell management, beyond water and plant based cleaners, employed a wide range of culturally specific approaches that don't always get included in discussions of ancient hygiene. Plant aromatics were used extensively across multiple cultures to manage body odor. Rubbing aromatic plant materials directly onto the skin, various species of mint, eucalyptus relatives, lavender family plants, resins from aromatic trees, delivers volatile compounds that temporarily mask and potentially inhibit the bacterial activity responsible for body odor. This is not fundamentally different from what modern deodorants do, except that modern deodorants use synthetic fragrance compounds and aluminum-based antiperspirant agents rather than plant resins. Smoke, counterintuitively, served as a hygiene tool in various cultural contexts. Deliberate exposure to smoke from specific aromatic wood fires served both as an insect deterrent and as a bacteriostatic agent, reducing the microbial populations on clothing and skin surfaces that would otherwise proliferate between washings. Various traditional cultures used smoking techniques for personal hygiene in ways that parallel the smoking of food for preservation, the same antimicrobial properties of wood smoke compounds working on different surfaces. Social grooming provided ectoparasite management that we've already examined in the context of hair care, but its relevance to general hygiene extends beyond hair. Regular mutual inspection and grooming of skin surfaces, picking debris, removing embedded material, cleaning wounds, served as a distributed maintenance system for skin health. This behavior is observable in virtually all social primates today, and was almost certainly a regular practice in ancestral human groups. It addresses the categories of surface contamination that water alone doesn't efficiently handle. Oral hygiene in the absence of toothbrushes and toothpaste is a topic that tends to produce particular contemporary horror, and the reality is more nuanced than either optimism or horror quite captures. As established in other contexts, the pre-agricultural human diet was dramatically lower in refined carbohydrates than the post-agricultural diet, and correspondingly less supportive of the cavity-causing bacterial activity that makes modern dental hygiene necessary. The combination of dietary composition and the natural abrasive action of the varied foods consumed, fibrous plant material, tough meat, nuts, seeds, provided a degree of mechanical cleaning simply through the act of eating. Beyond diet, twig chewing is one of the oldest documented forms of active oral hygiene and is practiced by populations across Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia to the present day. The Salvadora persica tree, the miswak or siwak, has been used as a chewing stick for oral hygiene for documented millennia, and scientific analysis of the plant's chemistry reveals why. It contains compounds including trimethylamine, an amine with antibacterial properties, salvadorine, fluoride in bioavailable form, silica serving as a mild abrasive, and various tannins with astringent effects on gum tissue. A chewing stick from this plant is not a crude approximation of dental hygiene. It is a pharmaceutical package containing antibacterial, fluoride-delivering, and abrasive components in a naturally integrated form. Other cultures use different plant materials for similar purposes: various tree twigs, plant fiber bundles, mineral abrasives. The common thread is that active oral hygiene practices using available plant materials were widespread across human cultures long before anything resembling a modern toothbrush existed. Ancient humans were not simply tolerating dental deterioration as inevitable, they were actively managing oral health with available technology. Wound care and skin infection management is the area where the gap between ancient practice and modern capability is both most significant and most informative about what ancient humans actually did. Without antibiotics, sepsis from infected wounds was a significant cause of death. This is simply true, and no amount of optimism about natural skin microbiome resilience changes it. Wound management mattered enormously in ancient contexts, and a wide range of materials were used for this purpose. Honey deserves particular attention. The antimicrobial properties of honey are not folk superstition, they are well documented biochemically and clinically. Honey creates a high osmolarity environment that draws water out of bacterial cells through osmosis, disrupting their function. It contains hydrogen peroxide produced by the enzyme glucose oxidase, which has direct antimicrobial action. It has a low pH that inhibits many bacterial species. Some honey types, particularly Manuka honey from New Zealand, contain additional antimicrobial compounds not present in all honey. Honey applied to wounds creates a physical barrier, maintains moist wound healing conditions, and actively inhibits bacterial growth. Ancient use of honey for wound treatment is documented in some of the oldest surviving medical texts, and it works because the biochemistry is real, not because of cultural tradition. Various plant materials with antimicrobial properties were used across different cultures for wound treatment. Preparations from plants containing tannins, which have astringent and antimicrobial effects. Preparations from plants containing specific volatile oils with documented antibacterial activity. Clay applied to wounds, which creates a barrier and has some antimicrobial properties. The effectiveness of these treatments varied considerably, and many wounds that would be trivially treatable today were lethal in ancient contexts. But the practices were not random. They reflected accumulated empirical knowledge about what helped and what didn't, refined over many generations of trial and observation. The picture that emerges from examining ancient human hygiene comprehensively is considerably more sophisticated than the standard popular image of unwashed prehistoric people living in filth and dying young from infections. The human body has a set of self-maintaining biological systems: skin cell turnover, sebum production, the skin and oral microbiome, immune function, that provide a genuine baseline of protection and cleanliness that does not require external assistance to function. Ancient humans built on this baseline with a range of active practices: regular water bathing, plant-based surfactants for more thorough cleaning, aromatic plant materials for odor management, social grooming for ectoparasite control, twig chewing, and abrasive plant materials for oral hygiene, honey, and plant preparations for wound management. None of this matches the efficacy of modern industrial hygiene products in their primary function of removing surface contamination. Modern soaps, shampoos, and detergents are dramatically more effective at stripping oils and surface material from skin than any plant-based saponin solution. Modern antibiotics are incomparably more effective against bacterial infections than honey or plant tannins. Modern toothpaste with fluoride is more effectively delivered than fluoride in chewing sticks. But the gap between ancient practice and modern practice is not the gap between nothing and something. It is the gap between less effective and more effective versions of the same fundamental approaches: surfactants, antimicrobials, abrasives, aromatic management, and water. And in one dimension, the microbiome, the modern approach may actually be producing outcomes that are not unambiguously superior. The disruption of ancient, co-evolved microbial communities by regular use of broad-spectrum antimicrobial products has produced a generation of dermatological and immunological conditions: eczema, atopic dermatitis, increased skin sensitivity, altered immune development, that are associated with over-sanitized environments in ways that suggest the balance between hygiene and microbiome maintenance requires more care than modern hygiene culture typically applies. The most quietly fascinating aspect of this whole examination is what it reveals about the relationship between the human body and the concept of cleanliness itself. Cleanliness, what it means, what it requires, what standard constitutes clean enough, is not a fixed biological reality. It is a culturally constructed category that different societies have defined differently in relation to the actual health risks present in their environments, the materials available for managing those risks, and the social meanings attached to different states of personal presentation. Roman cleanliness meant the strigil and the bathhouse. Medieval European cleanliness meant something that would horrify a modern microbiologist. Victorian cleanliness meant soap and water applied to visible surfaces with frequency, but did not extend to the elaborate internal standards of contemporary hygiene. Modern cleanliness means daily showering, multiple product applications, and a standard of bacterial load on skin surfaces that has no particular relationship to health outcomes beyond a certain baseline. Ancient hunter gatherer cleanliness meant something different still, calibrated to the actual threats present in their environments, the resources available for addressing those threats, and the social contexts within which personal presentation mattered. They were not dirty by their own standards, or by any standard that actually tracks health outcomes rather than product marketing. They were clean in the way that their bodies, their practices, and their environments defined clean. The Tuesday morning bathroom routine, examined from this vantage point, is a remarkable thing. The hot water that arrives in 30 seconds represents infrastructure whose development took thousands of years. The products sitting on the shelf represent the accumulated chemistry of centuries of formulation refinement. The pathogens those products help control represent risks that ancient humans managed with substantially less sophisticated tools and substantially more reliance on the body's own resources. Step back far enough, and the whole operation, the water, the lather, the rinse, the repeat, is a very recent layer over a very ancient set of problems that the human body was already working on, using systems that evolution refined over millions of years, long before anyone thought to add fragrance or package the whole thing in a pump bottle. Your skin was managing its own surface before there were products to help it. Your oral microbiome was competing with pathogens before there was fluoride to assist. Your immune system was making decisions about what lived on your surfaces before there were laboratory-formulated products offering to make those decisions for you. Ancient humans survived without soap or baths, not because hygiene didn't matter, or because they were too primitive to understand cleanliness, but because they worked intelligently with what they had, including, most importantly, a body that had been working on the problem for considerably longer than the soap industry has been in business. The water is warm, the products are on the shelf, and somewhere beneath the laboratory forest smell of your shampoo, a very old biological system is doing what it has always done, mostly despite your assistance rather than because of it.